Hello Fanatics, I'm Dylan Phillips, and let's talk about Season 1 of the Netflix original, Ozark. First, we'll tell you our recap of the show, followed up by our review, and then we'll finish off with telling you if it's worth the watch. Created by Bill Dubuque of The Accountant and the Judge, Ozark follows the story of a financial planner who suddenly uproots his family from the city of Chicago to a resort town in the Missouri Ozarks when he must pay off a debt to a Mexican drug lord. Recap time. The main story of Season 1 is the struggle of Marty Byrde as he attempts to set up a new money laundering operation in the Missouri Ozarks. After his business partner is murdered for stealing money from their employer, Marty is given a second chance when he offers to make back the money that his partner had stolen by starting up a new operation away from the prying eyes of Chicago. This show deals with a lot of subplots and storylines, so let's start off with the Byrde family. Marty brings his family down from Chicago to the Missouri Ozarks, where he promises his employer Dell that he's going to clean the $8 million that his business partner had stolen from him, and he also promises that this new operation is going to make him $500 million in 5 years. Marty's unfaithful wife Wendy is brought into the fold, and she agrees to uproot the family. As Marty attempts to buy every business in the Ozarks to help launder his money, Wendy decides to take a job as a real estate agent and helps scout out other places that they could potentially use for their operation. Meanwhile, their kids Charlotte and Jonah attempt to adjust to this different lifestyle while they learn about their father's illegal dealings. Eventually, Marty sends his family away, believing that it's a little too dangerous for them, but they end up coming back to try and finish what they started. Now, aside from the Byrde family, another major family in the show is the Langmores, and the three main ones are Russ, Ruth, and Wyatt. Ruth is a very smart and up-and-coming thief who decides to become employed by Marty. Now, she decides that she's going to have her own little schemes and wants to eventually kill Marty and take over his money laundering business so that she can bring the money back to her family. But she eventually decides against this and sees him more as a mentor. Wyatt also ends up having an odd relationship with Charlotte, but it's in Russ's storyline where we see the most development from the Langmores. Russ is a closeted homosexual man who is not a big fan of the Byrde family, but as he's trying to convince Ruth to kill Marty, he's approached by a Chicago fisherman named Rob, who eventually comes onto him. Now, Rob is actually Agent Roy Petty in disguise, and this agent has followed Marty from Chicago to watch him and eventually arrest him and his employer, Dell. Roy eventually gains the trust of Russ, but then forces him to become an FBI informant under the handling of Roy's ex, FBI agent Trevor Evans. Russ and his brother decide that they want to evade the FBI by killing Marty Byrde and then fleeing the Ozarks, but Ruth decides to intervene and electrocute them. The last major family in this season is the Snells, who are Jacob and Darlene, and they have a local heroin operation. Things become a little problematic when Marty decides to buy the strip club that they use for their money laundering, and then he further causes issue when he decides to try and launder money through the means of the church that he's going to build for a preacher. But the preacher instead preaches on the water for now, which is where the Snells are able to deliver and distribute their heroin. The Snells continue to strong-arm Marty at every turn as they take his money and threaten his family, but he's more afraid of his own employer, and the Snells just don't really care and keep pushing. Tensions rise between Dell's cartel and the Snell family, and Marty's right in the middle of it, and so he decides that he wants to create a joint venture between the two criminal operations where they're going to have their own riverboat casino. But the two sides can't see eye to eye, and eventually Dell dies, and now Marty finds himself in an even worse situation because now he has two very deadly employers and a lot of questions that are unanswered for Season 2. The other storylines in this season include Preacher Mason's family and their interaction with the Snells, Rachel and Marty's working relationship at the Blue Cat, and Buddy, the live-in tenant. Alright, so right off the bat, no matter what, this show is always going to be compared to Breaking Bad. And what Breaking Bad did in 5 seasons was nothing short of masterful, but therein lies the issue. Everyone compares 1 season of Ozark to 5 seasons of Breaking Bad, but you have to compare it to just the first season, which Ozark has 3 more episodes, but it also does a lot more than what Breaking Bad did, and I think that's in the tone, the story, and the characters. The story and tone for this series is definitely dark. It sets the scene for a desperate story that pushes the Bird family to their limits. It very much feels like if you took the Netflix original Bloodline and infused it with the tone, characters, and drama of Breaking Bad. And yet it still feels like it brings enough originality to the table, and I think that falls with the characters. The main character, Marty Bird, is a perfectly flawed protagonist. Now, of course, everyone's going to compare him to Walter White, and there's a lot of similarities, but it's in the differences where Marty shines. Firstly, their motivations are much different. In Breaking Bad, Walter White has a terminal illness, and therefore his motivation is that he wants to make money for his family to survive on after he dies. And so the only person's life that's at stake there is his own, and he knows that he's a ticking time bomb. So no matter how much money he makes while making meth, if he dies doing it, well, at least he made something and he had a thrill while doing it. Whereas for Marty's entire situation is that his family could die. It's not that he's gonna die and he has a ticking time bomb on him, but it's for the entire family. And so it's a means of survival for them. It's also a little bit different because Walter White's character did not start off making meth in the show, but we watch him gradually get better at it using his knowledge as a chemistry teacher. Whereas Marty has already been laundering money for a decade, and he shows how smart he is as a financial planner and money launderer. And so putting him into the situation in the Ozarks, he's already been doing this. It's just a different atmosphere. And Jason Bateman brings the wit and cynicism of Michael Bluth to this character, which is a great addition. Marty's wife, Wendy, is also a big reason as to why the first season is so gripping. While this couple definitely has their problems, they know it's a necessity to work together to help their children survive. This is really a situation of what if Skylar knew what Walter White was doing from the very beginning, and if she agreed to go along with it. Ozark explores this question, allowing Wendy to become a more fully fleshed out character as she deals with the consequences and has to struggle with her own self-worth during this process. Aside from the heads of the Bird family, two characters stood out to me in this season, and that was Charlotte Bird and Ruth Langmore. Charlotte is the typical dramatic teenager, but she quickly grows up when she's thrown into her parents' world. The way that Sofia Hublitz played this character was great because a lot of child actors can be hit or miss. Meanwhile, Ruth was a character that basically stole every scene she was in. She was snarky, she was charismatic, she was ruthless. She's very much the Jesse to Marty's Walter. It's a show that grows on you and is a lot better than some people are giving it credit for, as it explores the criminal underworld of the southeastern United States rather than the southwestern. What makes this show original is its cultural differences, its interwoven stories, and its interesting, flawed characters. Ozark is a brilliant dark drama focused on the criminal dealings of money laundering. With very strong performances by its leads and a strongly executed script, this series is unique enough to stop being compared to shows like Breaking Bad. From Bateman's charismatic protagonist to the thrilling narrative, this show had me hooked. So I'm gonna say, it's worth the watch. Bring on Season 2. And that's our recap and review of Season 1 of Ozark. If you've seen it, what did you think? And was it worth the watch? Let us know in the comments below. As always, I'm Dylan Phillips, and thanks for watching. If you liked this video and you want to see more, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Check out our latest Fanatic 5 video where we discuss the top Anthony Mackie roles. Don't forget to follow us on our social media. And until next time, Fanatics, keep it real.